Brokenness is a necessary part of purpose. In fact, God uses brokenness as a means to get us to our place of purpose. Today, let's talk about the blessings in brokenness. Sounds like an oxymoron, right? Brokenness is a very uncomfortable position, but a very necessary process which oftentimes propels us to our purpose. It's also a place that we'd rather not talk about when we're going through a time of brokenness. It's not something that we are just readily open to talk about, oftentimes. And it's certainly not something that we'll post as our status. Brokenness can be the result of our own fragility, our own mistakes, but it can also be the instrument used to get us to our intended purpose. Now, it's hard for me, and I'm sure many of you, to grasp the idea that being in the center of God's will can still lead us to a place of brokenness. But ask Jesus. Jesus found himself hanging on a cross, but he was smack dab in the middle of God's will. But there he was, hanging on a cross between two thieves, being ridiculed, being mocked. But he had to go through that process so that it could propel him to his purpose, which was to be the Savior of the world. Had that not happened, had there been no shedding of blood, then there would have been no remission for sin, and we would still be lost. So it had to happen that way. There had to be shedding of blood. There had to be a place of brokenness so that he could become who it is God had ordained for him to become, the Savior of the world. So let me encourage you right there. Whatever it is that you have had to endure or that you are enduring, it was necessary and it had to happen. Otherwise, your destiny, your purpose, or your future would not be realized. You would still be in a state of potential. And I often say there is nothing worse than seeing a person who is always in a state of potential. But God allowed you to go through that thing to maximize your potential. Had the divorce not happened, had you not lost the job, had you not had the ability to overcome the devastating loss of a loved one, you would not have been propelled to your next level. That thing that came against you to eat up your flesh, it didn't devour you, it did not succeed. As a matter of fact, that thing that should have destroyed you was the thing that God allowed something sweet to come out of. I say that because I think about Samson. Samson was on his way to his wedding, and it was a wedding that God had planned for his life. So while he was on his way there, a lion came out and attacked him. And the lion, a big lion, should have destroyed him while he was on his way to purpose. But God, the Spirit of the Lord, empowered him and caused him to be able to demolish the lion. And he discarded the lion's carcass and continued on to where he was going. So as he was coming back, he thought about the lion and he went over to see the carcass of the lion and noticed that bees and honey were coming out of the carcass. Get that. Something sweet was coming out of the thing that should have destroyed him, the thing that should have killed him. So I want to encourage you right there to tell you something sweet is coming out of this. Whatever it is that you're going through, something sweet is coming out of this. In our lesson today, it's found in Genesis, the 32nd chapter. We find a man by the name of Jacob. Now, Jacob was on his way to see his brother Esau in this story, whom 20 years earlier he had wronged him. He had stolen his birthright by a way of trickery. But on this night, Jacob himself found himself in a place of brokenness. Brokenness is God's way of shaping us until we surrender to his will and until we obey his plan. It's a state of lowliness in one's life and brings us to a place of total surrender and obedience. In our story, we find that one of the blessings of brokenness is that it builds character. When we are broken, we seek God. And it's here that our flaws are exposed and we can confront them, because we cannot change that we will not confront. God comes to meet Jacob in this place so he can challenge him, so he can confront him, and so he can not only change his name, but change his nature. He changed his name from Jacob, meaning one who is deceitful, or a supplanter, to Israel, meaning one who has prevailed with God. As this was the case with Jacob, brokenness can sometimes cause us to leave with a limp. Now, the limp says, I've wrestled with God and I've prevailed. So Jacob leaves that place with the blessing, but also with the limp. We're going to deal with the limp in another lesson down the road, but I want you to know that after his place of brokenness, where he was confronted about his character, he leaves there with the blessing, but he also leaves there with the limp. The second blessing of brokenness that we're going to talk about today is that it reveals our strength and our courage. Now, prior to Jacob's encounter with God, he was full of fear because he wasn't sure what his brother Esau was going to do to him. So what he did is he sent a messenger on ahead to find out, well, is Esau coming? What is he coming with? And the messenger comes back and says, oh, Esau is coming to meet you. And he has 400 men. So, of course, then Jacob is distraught. He is terrified. He's like, oh my God, my brother's going to destroy me. But after he goes through this night of prevailing with God, he found the strength and the courage to continue on the journey to meet his brother. Because now he's empowered with that strength. It's that thing on the inside of you that you don't really even know is there until you've gone through a situation and you're dealing with something, and then you find God has given you the strength and the ability to endure it. So he resolved by saying, you know what, come what may, I can face it now because fear no longer has control over me. The true measure of what we possess inside, it comes out of us when we have gone through our time and our season of brokenness. So the strength of God is with you, and he encourages you and he empowers you. So you thought the diagnosis was going to kill you. You thought that what the doctor said was going to destroy you. But in fact, look at you. You're still standing. You thought that the divorce or the lost job or the children or the family or whatever the situation is that has come against you to challenge you, you thought that thing was going to break you. But look at you. You're still standing. You may be limping, but you're standing. You're walking toward your purpose. So I'll declare to you today that the Lord is going to give you the strength that you need to endure. You're not going to lose your mind. You're not going to lose your hope. You're not going to lose your faith, but you're going to stand with the strength and the courage that God has given you, the fortification, the invigoration, the stimulation, even in this thing that you're dealing with. Lastly, the blessing and brokenness is that it develops our dependence on God. After Jacob wrestled with God, he is now totally dependent on God for his life. He's no longer going after the things that are trickery or deceitful to get what he wants, but now he is depending on God. When we depend on God, we realize that apart from him, we can do nothing. When we totally depend on God, every negative emotion, every fear, every despair that would prevent us from bringing things to God, we now find that we can give those things to God because we know that God cares for us. When God is our source and we are totally dependent on him, it doesn't matter what hardships we're faced with. It doesn't matter what we're challenged with. It doesn't matter what contrary wind is blowing against our lives. We can have a confident assurance of faith. I want to encourage you to embrace your place of brokenness. I'll leave you with Ecclesiastes 3:11, which says, he makes everything beautiful in his time. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you right here next week, Wednesday at 12 noon. Go be blessed, and remember, there are blessings in your brokenness.